stopping by my channel today. Welcome to Pen to Paper. I'm Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series and now author-tuber and heading into booktubing. So welcome. Today we are going to take our story structure session that I brought up last week and we're going to take a step further and we're going to talk about plotting and flying by the seat of your pants type of writing. And we're going to try to figure out which one works better for you. So last week we talked about story structure. We talked about the 5-act story structure, which is your beginning, and then you have your rising action, and then your climax, and your resolution and ending. And then we talked about in media res, where the beginning is flipped with the present moment story, and we see what has happened, the exposition through flashbacks, and then it continues with the story structure. And we also looked at the hero's journey, which is more often used in fantasy and sci-fi. But let's take that a step further. It's great to have structure and to know what goes into our book, but how do you write out that structure? We have two types of people, or two types of writers. We have plotters and then we have pantsers. So what is the difference between the two, and what is a plotter or a pantser? A plotter is someone who outlines their book before they even write it. Now that depends completely on how detailed their outline is. Their outline could just be a few scenes in every chapter, and then they write an outline for however many chapters they're going to have in their book. Or it could be as detailed as having character sketches, writing out note cards, exactly what scenes are going into each chapter, maybe even some of the dialogue that's going to be presented, clues that are going to be presented for a mystery, different tension builders that are going to be put into the story on different note cards, and then sometimes they'll rearrange them so they're put in the order that the writer wants to write the story in. Or some people will even use a board, a cork board, or even I just downloaded this, it's called MILANOTE, which is basically doing a board but on your computer, and they have an app, and so you can storyboard on there as well. So it depends how detailed they go, but basically a plotter is someone who outlines their book before they write it. A pantser is someone who just flies by the seat of their pants. They sit down at their computer and they write, and they let the story lead them where it wants to lead them. A little bit of a romantic notion, but it works for some writers. So which one's better? And if you're new to writing, which one should you choose? The answer is not one is better than the other. They both have pros and cons. And really, it just depends on the best way for you to work, what your personality is like, and all this is taken into consideration. So first of all, let's talk about the pros and cons of plotting and maybe the type of person who would gravitate more towards plotting. So the person that would gravitate more towards plotting would probably be someone who likes to know where they're heading in this certain direction. And this could even manifest itself in daily life. You don't like surprises. Maybe you need to know the exact route that you're going to take to a certain location. When you go shopping, you need to have your list. And if you don't have your list, you will be very stressed if you don't have your list. And if you forget one thing, that's the end of the world. So that might be the type of person that gravitates toward plotting. Now, the pros and cons of plotting. Plotting helps keep you focused on what is going to happen. There's not a lot of room for mistakes. And I'm going to put air quotes around that because we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. Plotting also helps break you out of writer's block more because you at least know the direction that you're heading in. So there's not a lot of room for questioning. Also, plotting helps you deliver your book faster with a finished product. So let's say you have a certain amount of chapters that you want to write in a certain time period, you're able to bust those out faster because you know where you're going. The direction is already set. Plotting also helps you balance out the elements of your book. So, making sure that there's enough romance where there needs to be, or setting of exposition, or laying out of clues for your mystery, or rising tension where it's needed. The plotting helps really solidify where everything is going to go. And really, you're able to follow your 5-act structure in a very structural way. Let's talk about pantsing. Pantsing is, basically sitting down at your computer to write and see what's going to happen. Now, pantsing is, I guess, a more creative way of writing. Not that you're more creative than a plotter, but basically you're allowing your story to take you where it wants to take you, allowing your characters to speak to you instead of you telling your characters where to go. Pantsing can also be a very exciting way of writing your story. Now, some of the cons of plotters and pantsers. Plotters, if you have plotted out your scene and it doesn't feel right to you, it can be very difficult to go backward and try something completely different, like pantsing. Like, just sit there and let the story take you where it wants, because you haven't exercised that muscle of letting go and just kind of trusting your gut and your characters and your story to lead you. Pantsing, there are some cons to that as well. The problem with pantsing is that you could write yourself into a tight spot and not really know how to get out of there, and then you might have to backtrack and then find a different way to write that scene or that character growth. Pantsing can also, if you're a very scatterbrained person in general, then you could go down a lot of rabbit holes. You might have more imbalance in your writing as well. But people who would be pantsers are people who like adventure, who like surprises. You kind of go along with whatever comes your way in life. You don't get stressed out very easily. You're always open to new, fresh ideas. That's the type of person who might be more drawn to pantsing. Personally, I am actually more of a plantser. So both a plotter and a pantser, and I'm going to explain. Before I sit down and write my book, I do a lot of thinking about it, and I actually don't usually write down what I'm coming up with for my story, because a lot of this thinking for me is done when I'm driving. Now that COVID has hit and I'm stuck more at home and I haven't been driving as much, it's actually been kind of a detriment to me, because that's the time that I would really think and mull over my characters and my plot and what was going to happen. And now that time is kind of gone, and something that I need to find a different avenue to do that. But before I even sit down to write my book, I've figured out a beginning where my character starts starting out, and I've figured out an end where I want my characters to end up. And I usually have very specific defining scenes throughout my story that I know I need to hit. Those are like my benchmarks. But almost everything in between, I have no clue what's going on. Somehow I know that I need to get from A to B, B to C, and C to D. And that's how I go. I like that balance because at least I have an idea of where I'm going, and there's less probability that I'm going to completely fall off the trail. But at the same time, I really enjoy letting the story surprise me and take me where it wants to go. And especially with my second book, Wisps of Gold, this happened quite a bit, where I did have one character that I had a certain way that I wanted my character to go. And turned out I had to argue with my character in my head for 20 minutes. I know, I promise you, I'm not a crazy person, but seriously, this is what happened. And I actually changed up my character and his vocation to better suit the story's needs. And that wouldn't have happened if I had plotted it out. I would have been much more confined to my plotting. Also, when you pants, there's a greater potential for new characters to come in to add more color to your story than you would have thought which also happened in my second book and even in my first book as well. And these are things that I really enjoy, but I do also enjoy having some sort of end goal to look forward to. And you may feel that you kind of want to borrow the best from both worlds, and I would suggest kind of aiming for that, because it gives you the flexibility of allowing your story to take you where it wants to go whilst having some structure that you can put over the story structure that we talked about last week and say, okay, I'm following a structure that readers will be able to understand and gravitate toward, which is really important. And if this is the first time for you, you have never written a story before, or maybe you have a few short stories or a novella or a novel, and this is something you'd like to try both ways. Try outlining. And if that works for you, great, go ahead and do it. But if you feel like you're stifled and you don't have that creative outflow that you perhaps need, then try pantsing and see how that goes. Or I would suggest taking the best of both worlds and going straight to plantsing, which would be plotting and pantsing together to create a story that is exciting to write. And if you are a seasoned writer and you've done pantsing the whole time, or if you've done plotting the whole time, why not shake it up a bit and try the other way around? If you're a plotter, try pantsing. Maybe not for a full novel, maybe a short story or a chapter of your novel, and see how it feels. And if you're a pantser, try plotting and see how that feels. And maybe that will help you find a better balance between the two. So hit me down in the comments below. Are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? Or are you a plantser? Let me know. And if you are one or the other, have you ever tried the other way? And how did that end up? Did it add to your story? Did it detract? I'd love to hear your plotter and pantser moments to share with me. And just wanted to let you know as well that for the month of May, for Mental Illness Awareness Month, I'm doing a giveaway of my first novel, Redeemed from the Ashes, in which one of the characters suffers from PTSD from World War I. I do have a video that describes a little bit more in depth the giveaway and what you have to do to enter that giveaway. So go ahead and check that down in the description box below. I hope that this video has been helpful to you and that perhaps it's given you a different way of looking how to write a novel or short story. And the bugs, guys, the mosquitoes are just eating me alive. And I've managed to stay still this whole video, but now I've had enough. Anyways, I'm going to hit the road. I hope you all have a safe week, a wonderful week, a beautiful week. Enjoy the sunshine. I hope you have sunshine wherever you are watching this. And I am looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye.